Your team is hitting moral targets. Nobody is quitting, surveys are green, and you are still missing deadlines. Output is average. Your best people look exhausted in a way they cannot explain. Here is what nobody is saying to your face: your niceness is the problem. Your strategy may be sound, your competence may be unquestionable, but your niceness is still costing you. Today, we are going to go into something most leadership content refuses to touch: the empathy paradox. By the time this is done, you will have a fundamentally different definition of what good leadership actually requires. I am Prerona Roy, the founder of Inspire Excellence. I work with entrepreneurs, leaders, and high performers to help them transform the beliefs and inner narratives that shape their decisions, relationships, leadership, and business results. And this specific failure pattern, I've watched it quietly dismantle more capable teams than almost anything else. One question: when did being kind become the same thing as avoiding difficulty? At some point, leadership culture made a trade. It replaced honest leadership with comfortable leadership and rebranded the whole thing as empathy. That rebranding has been expensive. Here is what this looks like in practice. A team member submits work that does not meet the standard. You know it, they probably know it too. You approve it anyway. Because the week was hard, because the relationship feels fragile, because you do not want to be that leader. That is not kindness. That is surface harmony. The appearance of a healthy culture built entirely on a shared agreement to never say anything difficult. Surface harmony is expensive. Underneath it is passive aggression, quiet resentment, and a slow erosion of standards among the people on your team who are actually paying attention. Amy Edmondson's 1999 study in the Administrative Science Quarterly identified psychological safety as a predictor of learning behavior, and learning behavior as the actual driver of team performance. The relationship between safety and output is not direct, it runs through that middle variable. Google's Project Aristotle reached the same conclusion independently. The single strongest predictor of team effectiveness was whether members felt safe taking interpersonal risks above IQ, experience, or team composition. But here is the part most leadership programs skip. Edmondson's framework maps team dynamics across two axes: psychological safety and accountability. High safety with low accountability produces what she calls the comfort zone. People feel secure but have no structural reason to deliver. This is the zone most nice teams are living in. And critically, a team that never surfaces conflict, errors, or bad news is not a healthy team. The silence indicates suppression, not the absence of problems. Kim Scott, the former senior executive at Google and Apple, author of Radical Candor, tells a story about an employee she calls Bob. She liked Bob. She also knew Bob was not performing. Every time performance came up, she reassured him. After nearly a year, Bob's underperformance was degrading her entire team's output. She was at risk of losing her top people. By protecting Bob from an honest conversation, she had been systematically unfair to everyone doing the actual work. Bob lost his job anyway, without the feedback that might have saved it. That is not kindness. That is negligence wearing kindness's clothes. Now scale it. Research shows 49% of average employees report burnout. The figure for high performers is 53%. Your strongest contributors are statistically more likely to burn out than everyone else on the team, because the traits that make someone excellent also makes them least likely to flag that they are running on empty. They absorb, they push through until they stop. Harvard Business Review documented the mechanism. Managers consistently overload top performers by assigning the hardest projects, expecting them to absorb for weaker team members, and adding one off tasks to already full workloads. The high performer takes it until they leave, quietly, without drama, to somewhere their effort actually matched by accountability. The downstream effect: when top performers leave because they were overloaded, the underperformers that caused the overload remain uncorrected, unchanged, because no one was willing to have the hard conversation. There is a second cost that rarely appears in leadership diagnostics: decision paralysis. When every call needs to feel comfortable to everyone before it is made, you lose execution speed. Teams that decide fast and course correct clean outperform teams that require consensus before moving. Leaders who mistake consensus for inclusion do not create belonging, they create bottlenecks. Two examples: different industries, different styles, one common principle. In 1993, three of Delio's senior leaders sent him a memo. The message: his directness was damaging people and stunting the firm's growth. His response was not to pull back. He refined the model. He began having individual conversations with each employee to establish the team of their working relationship, anchored on two questions: can I tell you what I actually think? And can you tell me what you actually think? His argument: the more information, disagreement, and unfiltered feedback that circulates internally, the less room there is for ego, blind spots, and untested ideas. He wanted every assumption challenged in the room before it was tested in the market. Bridgewater today manages over $160 billion. Delio credits the culture of radical transparency as the primary driver of that outcome. His model is not for every organization, the principle is. When Nadella became CEO in 2014, Microsoft's internal culture was described by its own people as knife fights, inertia, and fear. A know it all environment where individual performance was prized over collective learning. Nadella did not fire his way to a turnaround. He changed how feedback moved through the organization. He replaced precision interrogation in meetings with modeled curiosity, seeking to understand before evaluating. He shifted the culture norm from know it all to learn it all. Microsoft's market value moved from $300 billion in 2014 to over $2.5 trillion by 2023. The lesson from both leaders is not be nicer or be harder. The lesson is The quality of honesty matters as much as the honesty itself. I want to be precise here. I'm not telling you to run a fear based team. I'm not telling you to be harsh. What I'm telling you is this: the discomfort you feel before a hard conversation is not a signal to stop. It's a signal that the conversation is worth having. Three frameworks, each research grounded, each operating at a different level: individual feedback, conversation structure, and team culture. Together, they function as a complete operating system for honest leadership. Scott maps all feedback behavior across two axes: how much you care personally about someone and how you directly challenge them. Four quadrant results: radical candor, high care, high challenge is the target. Obnoxious aggression is high challenge, low care. Brutal honesty with no regard for the person. Manipulative insincerity is low care, low challenge. Political deflection. And then there is the fourth quadrant, the most common one: ruinous empathy. Ruinous empathy is what happens when you prioritize someone's short term comfort over the information they need to perform and grow. You care for the person, but you fail to challenge them directly. It feels responsible, it is in practice a disservice. Ruinous empathy is the most common management failure. Managers soften feedback to make it land better, and in doing so, remove the substance of it. Sometimes they use it to avoid giving feedback at all. Their people never understand where they actually stand. They stall or they are let go without ever having been given a fair chance to improve. The quadrant is diagnostic. Before any feedback conversation, the question is not what do I say, it is which quadrant am I operating from. If the answer is ruinous empathy, the first step is not wordsmithing, it is deciding whether you care enough to be honest. Once you have decided to have the conversation, how do you build it so that it lands without triggering immediate defensiveness? The Center for Creative Leadership developed SPI to separate observation from interpretation. Four components: situation, anchor the feedback to a specific moment, not recently or in general. When, where, and in what exact context. This removes ambiguity and gives the person a reference point they can actually work with. That is situation. In behavior, describe only what was observed, not character, not inferred intent, what the person did or said. The moment you shift from behavior to character, you are always disorganized. Instead of Tuesday's client call, the brief was not available, you lose them entirely. The third, impact. State the consequence on the team, on the client, on the outcome. Make the chain of cause and effect explicit. People do not resist feedback that connects their actions to real results. They resist feedback that reads as personal verdict. The Center for Creative Leadership extended this SPI to another I, adding a fourth element: intent. After stating the impact, ask what were you trying to accomplish? This single question converts a one way evaluation into a two-way conversation. It surfaces the gap between intention and outcome and builds understanding rather than defensiveness. Most feedback fails because it arrives as a verdict rather than a conversation. SBI gives you the architecture to deliver honesty with precision and without judgment. One honest conversation does not build a feedback culture. What builds a culture is feedback becoming predictable, expected, routine. Three structural requirements: regularity over intensity. Do not store feedback for high stake moments or annual reviews. Short, frequent, specific guidance builds tolerance and trust over time. Feedback has a short shelf life. When it is immediate, it is actionable. When it is held for a formal review, it arrives as a surprise, and surprise reads as accusations. Model vulnerability from the top. Before you can expect your team to receive feedback, well, you need to demonstrate that you can. Ask your team directly: what is one thing I could do or stop doing that would make it easier to work with me? Then listen. When someone tells you something difficult and you thank them for it publicly, you shift the entire culture's relationship with honesty. Idea person separation. Build one explicit standard that in your team ideas are challenged and people are supported. This is not abstract, it is a phrase you repeat, a norm you hold publicly. The moment someone conflates criticism of their work with criticism of their worth, address it directly. That conflation is what makes feedback feel dangerous. Edmondson calls this productive conflict, the capacity to surface problems, disagree constructively, and take calculated risks. Teams without it suppress critical information. Engineers avoid raising technical debt. Managers hesitate to challenge unrealistic timelines. The silence creates the failures. The feedback loop prevents them. Everything in those three framework points to a single philosophical shift. Real empathy, the kind that actually serves the people on your team, is not about protecting their comfort today. It is about investing in their trajectory. Letting someone coast because a hard conversation is uncomfortable is not kindness. That is abandonment dressed in kindness clothes. Think about the best mentor, coach, or senior leader you have worked with. Did they only tell you what you wanted to hear, or did they hold you to a standard you did not yet know you could meet and stay in the room while you figured out how? Churchill said there is no worse course in leadership than to hold out false hopes soon to be swept away. People need access to hard truths if they are going to learn how to navigate them. That is not cruelty, that is the highest form of professional respect. The leaders I most respect are the ones who hold their people to a standard the person did not know they could meet and stand beside them while they do. That is what builds capability. That is what builds loyalty. That is what builds something that outlasts any single role or project. Nice is easy. Clarity takes courage. And genuine empathy, that is the intersection of both. If something in this video landed, if you recognized your own team, your own patterns, do one thing. Identify the conversation you have been avoiding. Run the SBII framework in your head. Have it within 24 hours with specificity, with care, and with the other person's actual development as the goal. That is where high performance cultures are built, not in the all hands, in those individual moments of courageous honesty. If you want more of this, research backed leadership frameworks, real case studies, no feel good filler, subscribe. This is what we do here. See you in the next one.